Hello everybody, my name is Maria Isabel Fuentes. This is my Unit 2 Task 3, and this is where we point out how to determine the methodology used in an article. The article I chose is, excuse me, I'll read the name. It's The Non-English Major Lecturers Speak English, the Barriers Encountered by Adult Learners. And I found this was an interesting topic just by reading the title, because I'm going to begin teaching an English class to someone who has to go to Canada. So I thought like this would be very useful for me. And I began reading it, and at the same moment I began reading it, they said to me on the abstract everything they did. They said that the aim was investigating the difficulties and problems faced by non-English major lecturers when they were taking part in English discussion. It's qualitative descriptive research, and you have 10 non-English major 10 non-English major lecturers, and they went to a twice-a-week discussion. It was called the English Corner, I think it's like the course. To collect the data, they use interview and observation, and they also use Miles and Huberman interactive data analysis. So the aim was showing the barriers, and they classified 3 problems, and the sociocultural, linguistic, and interpersonal. And well, they gave like solutions for this. So I said like, okay, they gave me everything, but I said no, I'm going to read it all to understand how they really did it, because yeah, saying that is easy, but what does it mean, right? So first of all, I realized that this person began by, excuse me, I don't want to say the name because I don't know if I'm going to say it right. Ahmad Madkour began like giving a whole context of the thing. He says, or she says, it's from Indonesia, and it's focused on people who are wanting to learn specifically English right now, and people who are adults, and their aim is to speak better English because of something they have in their minds to do. So he began explaining that the study was going to be focused on andragogy and not pedagogy, because it's different. Andragogy is the term used for education for adults. So then he began explaining that it was important to understand that adults wanted to speak. That is one of the most important things for adults, because they have to communicate something. It's not in every case, but it's a general aspect that he had to take into account. And he wanted to be part of that learning process to see how he could get to a successful learning process, English learning process. Well, after that I began reading that he begins giving like the principles of the andragogy, which are like very important to take into account. So he says that the first principle is, excuse me, adults need to know why they need to learn something before undertaking it. The second principle is the learner's self-concept. The third principle is role of the learner's experience. The fourth principle is readiness to learn. The fifth principle is orientation to learning. And the last one is the adults have a life problem or task-centered approach on their learning. After the researcher gives us the whole theoretical framework, he begins talking about the method. He says that this study was descriptive qualitative research, and it was conducted in IAIN Metro Lampung, and the subject was those people who are major and cannot like speak a second language, which in this case is going to be English, and who participate in a forum which is called the English Corner. There were 10 participants. They were between 36 and 60 years old, and they came from different language backgrounds too. And after they collected all the data, which was taken as observation, so this person did the observation. So the writer conducted observation in 6 weeks of the forum. And with this observation, the main aim was to see the difficulties when they were going to speak in English. And after the data was collected, they used a model which I didn't know was the Miles and Huberman model. And so I had to look for it and say, like, okay, what is it? So this model is a model which has 3 steps. The first step is data reduction, and this is when we have a mass of qualitative data and taken by interview, transcript fields and notes. So this is the first thing where you say, okay, they have like observation, so this is going to be data reduction, focus on, could be Miles and Huberman analysis. And then it is reduced and organized, yeah? So they say that you could use codes, writing summaries, discarding irrelevant data, or so on. So we don't use numbers here like quantitative numbers, yeah? In this point, what you try to do is discard all the information that is not relevant, but you can access to it if you need it later on. And also you can find, like, focus on unexpected findings that you made and check later if they're necessary or not. The second thing is the data display. So to draw these conclusions from the mass of data you had, Miles and Huberman say that a good way of showing the data, like in tables or charts or networks or other thing, is essential so that you actually understand what you're doing. So I think this would be like comparing to the quantitative part, like organizing the stuff where you can actually say what your findings are in a way that other people can also understand it, and it's not like something like whatever, yeah? And this is very useful because I thought, like, I have to say that I don't like quantitative a lot because I don't like numbers a lot and it gets me a little bit confused. But I didn't also know how to exactly do something with qualitative data, yeah? Because qualitative, when made wrong, can lead to shallow findings. So I think that, well, this second step makes me think about, okay, so yes, you organize the data on a qualitative research, and this is a continual process, and this is not only, this step doesn't happen only at the end, but you have to begin discarding from the beginning on. And I think at the end you have like the last findings, but as when you begin, you have more data, and then you go like this. The third thing is the conclusion drawing or verification. And the analysis should allow the person to begin to develop conclusions about the study. So these conclusions can then be verified and to see if they're valid. And so you have to go back to the notes, to the field notes, and all the data collection to actually go to the conclusion. So as we saw on the first unit, I now understand when they said that when people think about qualitative research, it's like, oh yeah, that's super easy, but no. Then I began looking for the coding qualitative data part, yeah? So it says that is the organization of raw data into conceptual categories. So you just have a lot of ideas, and then you have to make them categories so that everybody understands it. And each code is effectively a category or a bin into which a piece of data is placed. So either it works or it doesn't work, yeah? So as Miles and Huberman say, it's like codes are tags or labels for assigning numbers of meaning to descriptive or inferential information compiled during a study. Codes are usually attached to chunks of having size, word, phrases, of chunks of varying size, words, phrases, sentences, or whole paragraphs. So that's not an easy process. Codes must be valid, mutually exclusive, or exhaustive. Valid is that they should accurately reflect what it is being researched. Mutually exclusive is that they should be distinct with no overlap, and exhaustive, that is relevant data should fit into a code. So continuing with the article I chose, they said that first they did this Miles and Huberman model, and then at the end, well, after the data reduction, and then the third step was the data was displayed by describing the difficulties of the lecturers in a narrative way. So at last, the writer made the data verification by making conclusion of the data findings. As I continued reading, then they explained like the findings, and this is the part where I think it's a bit tricky to actually get the right ones. I think the observer had to sit down and really check what he had there, because he had a mass of information. So he focused on different things. The learner's perception, that's the first thing, where he asked, what do you think about English? Yeah. And well, that was the first thing. And there you get like adults' real reasons, adult learners' motivation. So he began focusing on like the littlest thing to the biggest. Yeah. Then he went to the problem of linguistics, but that's something the observer was just checking himself. They weren't aware of him doing that. Here he saw the lack of vocabulary and the interference of Indonesian language or any other language from the other languages they were natives from, and the sociocultural problems. So he focused on no opportunity to practice English, and the lack of confidence, which is super, like, it's normal with adult people. And he also named those were the aspects he named. At the end, when he talks about the findings, if you go furthermore reading on this, to read this article, what I see is that they back up everything they say with a lot of theory, and they also back up that theory with their experience of what they observed. So what I can see on this qualitative research is that it is very important to have a strong theoretical basis, which is going to back you up with your ideas, have a very good method to, well, in this case was the Miles and Huberman method to analyze the data. So when you have all of these things, it is a good thing to work with a qualitative approach. And well, now I understand a bit more how you do it, like by reading the article and seeing the steps they did, reading the whole article, and then going and asking myself, okay, what is this Miles and Huberman model? How did they do that? So, well, I think you enjoyed my video. I will be looking forward to your comments, and I'll be looking forward to your videos too, to give you feedback. Thank you so much.